So this frame has capped brood right through the middle there. It's February 20th, 2023. Temps are in the 60s. It's been unseasonably warm lately. The signs of spring are popping all over the place. The bees have been flying, bringing in pollen. We're seeing on our local weather forecast, they're doing pollen forecasts for allergy sufferers, and that's something we don't normally see until March. So everything seems ahead of schedule. We're not out of the woods yet. It is still early enough in the year we could see a lot of cold weather before spring actually gets here. But what we see now makes me optimistic, and hopefully we can hang on to these mild temperatures for a while. If we have a long, early, extended spring, I'm all for that. But that does mean that we need to get into the hives a little earlier. So far the hives are looking really good. I started winter with 8 hives, and as of today 8 hives are flying, but this is a critical time of the year. More hives die off in March typically than through the rest of the winter, and that's because this is a time that the colonies are building up, and if they don't have the nectar resources at the end of winter to support that buildup, then they can starve out. I'm going to open up the hive and see how we're set for the year. I'm going to start out by inspecting what I guess I could call Mom's house. This was the hive that held my original mother colony that I got from a trap out, and I want to start on it because it's the hive that I'm seeing the least activity from right now. Now this is also my least insulated hive. This is my first 12 frame hive that I built using Langstroth boxes, and it has some wood on the sides for a little extra thermal mass, but overall I didn't add much in the way of insulation to this hive. I'm expecting that they are the hive that probably went through the most of their resources in order to keep their winter cluster warm. So we'll open it up and see how they're doing. This first frame has a pretty good amount of honey on it. In fact, it's fairly heavy, so pretty well covered with honey over on that side, and about the same on the other side. The next frame is a similar story. We got pretty good honey at the top of that frame. There's actually nectar down below. This frame is kind of like the last, a lot of nectar in there and some pretty good bee bread in there, which I'm not at all surprised the way they've been gathering in pollen lately. Have not yet seen any brood. Now we've got here a small band of honey at the top of this frame, but a lot of nectar down through the rest of the frame. And this frame is covered with bees better than the others. I don't see any brood in there that they are taking care of. I'm just seeing nectar. I'm dripping a little nectar out there, so you can see how much wet nectar there is on there. I kind of hate to waste that for them. We'll try to be careful of that. It may just be that the queen hasn't started laying yet. There's a possibility they could be queenless, but it's still early. They're not stirred up like you would expect a queenless hive. This hive contained my mother colony, and that colony swarmed last year. The hive naturally produced themselves a new queen and have been doing fairly well since. I really have not done much with this colony since then, just kind of let them build themselves back up after the swarm. Well, I'm not seeing the queen. I'm going to make one more pass through here to take a look for her, and if I don't find her, we'll just check back later on. Well, at least we can say for this hive that resources are not a concern. They should not have a problem getting through the rest of winter. I just would have liked to see the queen or some sign that they were starting to produce brood, but we'll check back on them and give them a little more time to get things started there. Now I'm going to look in the green hive. The colony that's in this hive is a granddaughter colony of the original mother colony. Most of my colonies are actually descended from that original queen. The genetics from that queen have been great for my apiary. Very strong, very healthy. So I keep producing hives from that. This colony has lately been one of my most active, one of the first to get started on cold mornings. So let's open them up and see how they're doing. My first frame that I'm looking at, I can see that there is a lot of honey on this frame, and which these outside frames are the frames that they will use in the spring. They wouldn't really access this honey during cold weather when they are in a cluster. But they've got a lot of honey on there and some wet nectar down below. This next frame also has a lot of honey and a lot of wet nectar. See, that frame is pretty much all full of nectar. Now this next frame, which would be one of their brood frames for them to cluster on, still has a pretty decent band of honey at the top. That's what we look for going into winter, and it appears that they had adequate resources getting through this far. Storing up quite a lot of bee bread on there. They do seem a little defensive. I'm going to move fairly quickly through here. So this frame has cat brood right through the middle there, and it's all worker cells. I'm not yet seeing any drone cells, but seeing quite a bit of cat brood on there. So that is really great. Seeing some larvae in there. I'm seeing here healthy population, good resources. Yeah, she got me. So I don't need to go any farther. I'm going to go ahead and close this hive up, let the bees go back about their business. So this hive, in my first year, I winterized most of my colonies on 5 frames each. This hive went into winter with 3, 6, 7, 8 frames, which is outstanding. So let's move on to another hive. Taj Mahive is my biggest hive, which currently houses 2 colonies. I will mention, as I watch traffic at the entrance, Hive 3, which is on this end closest to the camera, has been consistently active. Hive 1 has been one that's had me worried a little bit. I actually thought they were dead on our first warm day about a week ago, but it's always taken them about a day longer than the rest of the hives to really get active. So let's go ahead and look at Hive 1 and see what's going on in there. So this first frame has good honey at the top and a little bit of honey in the middle. Looks like there might be some nectar in there, can't quite see yet. It's a good heavy frame. Yeah, we got nectar in the middle and honey at the top. This next frame also has good quantity of honey on it. That is a heavy frame. It is about packed with honey and nectar. And a little bit of bee bread in there. Now we're getting into good population here. As I open up this frame, bees are kind of starting to pour out. So here I think on this frame we've got what I was looking for. And this is another large 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So they overwintered on 10 frames. Those first 2 frames didn't have a lot of bees on them. They probably could have overwintered on 1 or 2 fewer frames, but they are not lacking in population here. I'm going to pull this up. Oh, I thought I saw, yeah. We've got some cat brood right there. So, got a good brood frame there. Got some more cat brood and larvae and bee bread on this side. So they're getting things started this year. So it looks like they're good with resources. Getting started with brood. Not much concern there. Let's go ahead and close them up. Now we'll move along to Hive 3. This colony in Hive 3, kind of like the green hive, has been one that has always been an early starter on warm days. Now this first frame has just a little honey on this side, and I think that was the case when we closed this up. I think it was just like a little extra honey that I left for them. This next one has good, fairly solid honey, and it's fairly dark towards the bottom. Looks like they might have some nectar on there, which has been what we're seeing from most of the hives. So look at all the honey on there. So and above that is all nectar, and below that is nectar. And it's possible, again, that they have chewed some of that out. In fact, some of these cappings stand out above the rest, so it does look like they've kind of been chewing away at some of that wax. So that may answer a little bit of that mystery to tell us that some of that nectar is actually honey that's been opened up. This next one shows an interesting pattern as well. You can see that they've been chewing down on the cells. I didn't notice this in the other hives, so it's kind of interesting how different it is. They still have quite a bit of resources in there. And this side they really haven't opened much up. But I want to show on this side, if you can see, I'm going to try to get that from an angle to show how much they've chewed those cells down. That is just really interesting to me. So they didn't just open up the cells and then eat the honey out of them, they kind of like chewed the cell walls down. This other side, they've got bee bread throughout there, just storing up that pollen. And they've got good, strong population here. This next frame is completely covered with bees. There we've got our brood. Nice cat brood throughout there. I'm going to take a look at one more frame since they're being a little more gentle with me. And we've got, oh yeah, good brood on there. Cat brood all throughout there, a lot of larvae down below that. I see eggs down in those bottom cells, so we're at all stages. See some bees carrying pollen around in there, looking for a place to put that. And they've got good honey reserves on there, so no issues with resources, and they are producing brood. I am very curious to see how well this Langstroth hive has done over winter. They've been very active as the weather's warmed up. But this was one that they always kind of struggled last year. Some of you may have watched my series on trying to get a queen in the Langstroth hive, or rather get a colony started in the Langstroth hive, and it didn't always go well. The colony that finally took off in here was one from a cutout that I did. Put them in there, they did fine. I ended up combining them with another colony that had a queen that was not performing well, and I ended up removing her and just combining those bees and their resources with this hive. They are on two deep Langstroth boxes. Going into winter, I did feed them fairly heavily, but then after I had fed them, I closed up the hive, insulated it, and let them be. So I want to check and see how they're doing on resources now, and if they look like they're in good shape going into spring. Alright, well, our population is not lacking. They've got nectar and bee bread stored up on that side, which is surprising. Pulling this first frame, I kind of expected it just to be an empty frame, and they are working away on their storing up bee bread. And I did use 2 deeps on this. Some people have talked about they overwinter successfully on 1 deep, but I like giving the bees, kind of following what I do in the Layens hives, give them plenty of vertical space for their cluster to move vertically and feed on the honey above them. And like I mentioned, since I sealed this hive up, these bees have not been fed over winter. They have survived on what they had starting out. And they still have, well, there's capped honey, there's some open nectar, and quite a bit of bee bread on that frame. And, well, there we got brood right there. Got cat brood all throughout this area here. And on the other side. I hadn't even glanced at the other side before I looked. They are already getting to work. I'm gonna pull one more frame and see what's happening here. I'm expecting there's probably more brood there. Yeah, got cat brood. Got some honey and bee bread. And they've got this side is still all capped honey. So it looks like they're doing really well. And here we've got a frame that is, well, on this side it's mostly nectar. The other side is kind of a different story. We've got good quantity of honey over here, and then a lot of bee bread. I don't know if you can see all that yellow bee bread down in those cells, so that's pretty cool. Close back up, let's move along. Now I'm going to show you a hive that I have not put on video before, and this is my resource hive. It's not really one that I worked on developing into a hive, but as I was working on getting a queen for the Langstroth hive, last year I ended up buying 2 queens. That first queen turned out not to work out real well. I had her in one hive. They ended up dying out. They were overtaken by hive beetles, and the queen just really didn't produce much brood. I'm like, well, she's a new queen. Gave her another try, and she didn't work out for the other hive. That's the queen that I ended up removing and then combining those bees in the Langstroth hive with the colony that was there. The other queen I put into a Layens hive just with a few frames and just some bees to try to keep her alive, and they're still active. I am absolutely shocked. I did not expect this hive to get through winter. It was just so I'd have an extra queen. Kind of a junk hive, really. So this colony, if they survive, may become one of my rock stars. So let's see how they're doing. So this first frame has a little bit of mold on it, and there's some nectar on the other side, but that's about it. I'm not too concerned. You know, the bees will clean that, but it's just a sign that there was some cold and condensation on that side. The hive itself is not looking great, and these bees may not make it all the way to spring. This was not a colony that I anticipated making it this far. This side's got some nectar at the top. Down at the bottom looks like maybe a little bit of gray mold on the edge of that wax, but this side they got some honey stored up in the top and some nectar. Seeing a little more honey at the top. Now they have a lot of hive beetles in here, and not a lot of population to deal with them. Hopefully that won't become a major issue for them, but they do have honey and bee bread on this side of that frame. They only have 5 frames in here, and that's counting that first frame that really didn't have much. So they have, they're survivors for sure. And here we've got cat brood and some bee bread down there. They do have some larvae. Trying to get the sun at my back, and I'm seeing a few eggs in there. So they're starting to build up. And then this final frame, this has some cat brood. I see my queen on here, and she's a marked queen, a you know, purchased marked queen. So she's kind of doing her thing, and looks like I chose the wrong one when I was choosing one of those 2 queens to get a colony started. You know, they've got what they need. They've got some resources left. They've got some brood started. I'm just kind of in disbelief at how far they've gotten based on my original hopes for them, but I'm happy that they have gotten this far. I'm glad that my investment in those queens didn't come up totally short. Got me a splinter. So we'll close them back up, get our divider board back, put their pillow back on top, and let them keep on plugging through spring. So far, I am really pleased with what we found on these inspections. There's 2 more hives that I have not inspected, and to be honest, I don't think it's necessary to get into those today. Our temperatures are starting to cool down, the bees are becoming less active, the winds are picking up. We've kind of seen the same story repeated over and over with each hive that we've gotten into. They are starting to produce brood, they have good resources, and I have no reason to believe that those other 2 will be any different. And the story of those 2, one is a swarm that I caught last spring. Going into winter, they had a pile of dead bees in front of their hive, and I thought, oh no, this colony is lost. They have never shown any slowdown in the activity at their entrance. In fact, they are a colony that when it's 43 degrees, they're active. Winter doesn't seem to faze them. So they've just been super busy, have not seen any setbacks there that cause me concern. The other one is a daughter colony of my original mother queen. That is a colony that was in the green hive last year, did a split and moved them out into another hive. And they've just been consistently active. I don't have concerns there. The only concern I did find is in that first hive that we inspected. Did not see the queen, did not see any brood. So I'm a little concerned about that, but we'll check back in a couple of weeks. It's possible that they are just late getting started. That may be one colony I have to combine, but so far, that's the only one I see concerns about. So I'm very happy about that. So I do appreciate you coming along for these inspections. If you've enjoyed this video, then you might also like this video that Google has selected especially for you. Thanks a lot for watching. I'll see you next time.